All right, let's call to order the special meeting of the Gainesville City Commission for February 23rd, 2015, as we take up the search for a new city auditor. And all are present, so we now need to move to adopt the agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt the agenda. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Any discussion of such? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes.
Official.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is Mr. Carlos Holt.
Hello.
Welcome.
Wonderful.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Testing.
Thank you very much for being with us today, and also just want to offer congratulations on being a finalist for this position. And we had already received your resume. Now it's put together in a nice little packet for us, so we can reference it as we go through these series of questions. We have about 12 questions, although some of them have some context to them, and you will have about an hour to go through them at your pace, and we should have plenty of time. What we're finding is that we can cover all this ground, so we want you to take your time and be thorough, and let us know what we want to know, essentially. I'm going to start with the first question, and then each of my colleagues will ask some questions, and then we'll come back and sort of wrap it all up. Okay, anything before we get started? Ready? Wonderful. All right, so we've had an opportunity to review your resume. If you would now just take a few minutes to explain from your perspective how your background prepares you for this position.
Well, I believe my background prepares me very well for the position. For the last 8 years, I've been in the trenches with internal audit in a large city, about 3 to 4 times this size, and understand there's various differences to different sized communities. But in 2007, they had a public referendum to make internal audit independent. It used to be under finance. They hired my boss, who's the Metropolitan Auditor, who's you're welcome to call, Mark Swan, very good man, very good auditor. He was hired. He hired me. I was working at Space and Naval Warfare Center in Charleston, South Carolina, in the Inspector General office. He hired me as the internal audit manager, and we have completed approximately 17 audits a year. We have a staff of 10. I have 8 direct reports. I have been basically on the front line conducting audits and investigations of city and county functions. We are metropolitan government of combined operations similar to Duval County and Jacksonville. And we've done everything from audit the water system to the trash collection to the register of deeds, the county clerk, traffic tickets. I spent about a year auditing crime statistics after it was alleged our police department had fudged the figures. I've actually given a lot of speaking engagements and conferences and direction courses on auditing. I speak at in Middle Tennessee State University on a fairly regular basis to their accounting department, to their potential auditors. I'm well known in the community, and I interface with many public organizations, professional organizations. I've been a CPA since when I first they hired me in Nashville. I found out I had 2 subordinates that were CPAs. So I was a CIA and a CFE at the time. I had my enough accounting hours, so I went ahead and put in for the CPA test, ordered the materials, and had everything completed and my license in 5 months, which I thought was pretty good, because you can only take it every quarter. So I believe that my background and experience, and I spent 21 years in the Marine Corps, and on much of that time, at least the last part of the last 10 years, except for a couple of wars, I was in charge of either compliance, operations, comptroller, accounting departments, or business operations. Had a $10 million contracting warrant I stood up a management analysis control office. I put in place internal control program from scratch for a large business operation with about 40 businesses across a major military installation. Uncovered probably 6 fraud schemes in the first 6 months, and wrote a chapter in an ACFE fraud case book that was published on one of the cases. And I believe I'm fully qualified for the job.
Wonderful. Thank you for that response. And Commissioner Carter.
Thank you very much for being here. My question today, or one of them, is as you perceive it, what is the primary role of a city auditor, and how will you go about defining and fulfilling that role?
Well, the public interest is the overriding concern in any function, in my belief, and if you go by government auditing standards, that is the overriding principle in auditing standards, is the public interest. The public generally has an interest in efficient and responsive government, effective government, and they want to know the truth, whether it's good or bad. And I see at the city auditor position, sometime I'm going to bring you bad news. But in a way, it's good news that we found this out in time to correct it. It's not what some of us in auditing call a lurking demon. Right now, any government of this size or larger probably has several lurking demons that are out there, that you're not sure exactly what they are at this time, but they're going to roar their ugly head at some point in the future and bite you. And if that internal auditor can look out across the horizon and see what other cities are doing, audit various aspects of the government, use external and internal resources to get to the bottom of things, and also take requests when somebody spots a problem, wants to know the truth, what is going on with that function, and can get in there and get back in a reasonable period of time and tell you the answers. They've done their job. They shouldn't be biased. They shouldn't, if they lean one way or another on various things, they should keep that in their own pocket. The internal audit shop should. Decisions are made by management, not by auditors. Auditor's job is to bring you the information that you need to know to do your job. And that's what I would intend to do. And I met your staff over there. I spent about an hour with them, and they're great people. But as I explained to them, with a new director, you will always have change, and people are resistant to change. And they seem to agree with that, and because people have a different way of doing things. So there'd be changes I'd definitely make as soon as I came aboard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you making the trip. I'm going to ask you a question about credibility and trust, important to our function and yours. How would you establish credibility and build trust with the elected officials, with your fellow charter officers, with department directors and staff, and the community at large?
Well, that's something that all members of your staff basically you have to do on a daily basis. You can't just do it once or say this is what you stand for and this is how you're going to be. That's something you basically have to walk the walk on a daily basis. Everything from being competent and knowing what you're talking about, not running on. You have to stick to your ethical principles. You have to be seen as a reasonable person that's just trying to do a good job. If you're out there, getting all kinds of violations from the police department or known to be in bars half the night every night, you're probably going to some bad things are going to happen to you. If you're known to say things that aren't true and exaggerate things that you find, you're not going to be held very credible. And over a period of time, when you have delivered on expectations, then people will begin to trust you, and you're going to build trusting relationships, throughout the organization. Audit can't be seen as I'm going to, they're going to come in and give me all these gotcha. We got you on this one, and got you on this one, and exaggerate them, and and run out with these reports and the surprise reports that, there should be no surprises in audit report. Everybody should know, before the report comes out, everything should have been discussed many times with the department or whoever's being audited, the opportunity to respond and convince you why it's wrong or different or should be seen in a different light. All of those things have to be taken into consideration, and you just have to stick to your principle. You got somebody on your staff that doesn't hold true or doesn't perform, and you're going to have to try to correct them, or may have to part with them. But your entire staff, that city auditor, he's responsible for his staff and himself and his conduct. And over time, building relationships and delivering worthwhile results that meets the needs of the expectations, adding value to the organ. If you're not adding value, why are you going to fund the department?
Very good, thank you. The City of Gainesville values diversity and inclusiveness a great deal. We've do more than just put words out in policies. We really are proactive about it, and it's important. Can you talk about any challenges that you've faced in ensuring diversity in your office or any of your experiences professionally, and what kind of things did you specifically do to address them?
I have never had a problem sharing, having diversified functions. In Nashville, we have gone out of our way to be very inclusive in our hiring. We have a staff of 10, and we usually hire the best person for the job, and that has always resulted in a various mix of male, female, African American, Asian, and Caucasian, workers. I have never been in the position of an HR person or somebody to decide any policy or anything of that nature. In the military, the recruiting was done elsewhere, as long as you treated people right. And I tell you, in the Marine Corps, from day one in boot camp, everybody's scrambling, so there really isn't. I can't say that I've really ever been challenged with that, but I see the need to be open and diverse, and I believe it's good to be that way and to be proactive. I have no problem with it. I can't really cite you that many experiences I have with any type of policy or hiring decisions or any adversities. I've never had any complaints or anything of that nature.
Thank you.
Please, good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to Gainesville.
Thank you.
Is that an orange and blue tie?
No.
It's red and blue.
It's red and blue. I believe it's from Princeton.
Okay. I'll forgive you for that.
My wife buys me all these old school ties.
We're gonna call it orange and blue today. Okay. Orange and blue, orange and blue. Think orange and blue. Please describe your auditing experience within the following specific areas: performance, operational, financial, compliance, fraud and investigation, which it sounds like you have much, and utilities. These bullet points are listed on a piece of paper there for you to, you see them?
Okay, yes, I see them. Well, if you go by Yellow Book standards, first of all, there's really only three types of engagements, and that is a financial audit, and attestation engagement is the second kind, and there's three types of those. One of them is agreed upon procedures. That's the lowest level, where you write down everything you're going to do, and that's all you do. The second one is a review level, and that's where you go in and look at everything and say, well, nothing else came to my attention. And then the one like you get on your financial statements, that's an attestation examination level, and that's where you got to go back and do everything. Look at the processes. There is no that nothing came to our attention. You are responsible for checking it out. But for the most part, what you're talking about fall under the category in the Yellow Book of performance audits. And the performance audits can be compliance, operational. Those are all described in the scope. So when you're talking about an audit, most of our audits are performance audits, and they have various scopes, such as operational aspects to them, or compliance with regulations and so forth, or a fraud, to determine if there's fraud present in the payroll system. So all of those fall into the category of performance audits, which, as I said, I have been responsible for overseeing approximately 17 or more performance audits a year for the last 8 years. I did a number of performance compliance audits in the military. I also did management functions, setting up the internal control program and the training for all the supervisors and above. I was the single point of contact at Space and Naval Warfare Center, a $5 billion organization for the Manager's Internal Control Program for the Department of Defense. I reported to the CO for the whole program. I interfaced with every department that we had. So and going back to utilities, since I've been in Nashville, we have done several audits of the water, mainly water. We just put in a new billing and cash collection system a couple of years ago, and we just finished an audit of it, which I have a report here with me if you'd like to see it, on auditing that function. Basically, we looked at the cash collection process within water and all the various places that collected cash. We looked at the new system that was put in, all of the IT controls, the roles and responsibilities. You have to have a segregation of duties within the system so that one person can't write down a bill and then also be responsible for the collections. You have to have various, such as in payroll. You can't have somebody write down some of the biggest payroll schemes, or somebody changes the rate of pay right before the payroll and then changes it back. Or they have what they call ghost employees. Somebody quits and we keep generating a paycheck for them for the next 6 months and cashing it. Or we change their account number so the bank transfer goes to account we are overseeing. And that takes somebody inside the organization. So you have to look more and more. A lot of these audits have an IT component to them. And you have to have that element within your audit shop. As far as, and I've done a number of conflict of interest investigations with the water department. We have about a $1 billion stormwater program after a consent decree from the federal government. And so we have $260 million worth of water bills annually. And so I've done various audits or investigations spurred by complaints that somebody was getting more contracts than they should. This contractor was getting more than they should. They couldn't do the work. Nobody was out there, and various things like that. So, and getting back to the fraud, I've been a frequent speaker. I probably have, over, I don't know how many, definitely over 100 and something fraud cases. I worked probably 80% of my time at SPAWAR on fraud cases. Mainly conflict of interest and various contract irregularities, everything from no price controls to the personnel substitution. The contractor bids saying they're going to have these various qualified people and named people, and then they start switching various people with little experience in anything. And also, the deliverables, what they're providing. So I did that a lot, and also did a number of audits at SPAWAR, but I've handled, every one of those areas many times over many years.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Wells?
Thank you, and good morning.
Morning.
Obviously, as you touched on there, the role of the city auditor can be a threatening one. And so I'd like to have an understanding how you pursue maintaining positive relationships, whether it be with the senior officers, in our case charter officers, or the other employees within the organizations as you go about doing your work.
Well, it all gets back to the communication and building relationships from the start, and of course finding out and acting on the process, not stepping outside of the process, and just I've seen auditors in other cities and they get themselves in trouble, and when one of the ways is somebody wants them to audit something, or they come up with some kind of idea and they go off and running on some big audit that in the end doesn't turn out too good, and then everybody claims that, you shouldn't have done that audit. Why did you go do all that? And so if you stick with the process by getting an audit plan, getting it approved, something comes up, you add it to the audit plan, you ask your audit committee whether that's a good idea, whether you want this audited, and they endorse it, you're in much better shape to have that audit planned. I mean, you're auditing so that management can make better decisions. And that's why you're providing the information. So if you're seen as a tool, a value-added tool for management, that's going to go a long way. You're not just out there on your own whims auditing things that may or may not need to be audited. Quite frankly, an audit plan should be based on the strategic plan of the government. We need to do a risk assessment, and the risks are dependent on what your objectives are. The risks have to cover our objectives. If your objective is to be a tourist town, if that is your number one priority, then our risk assessment should be on what could cause that to derail. In Nashville, we get a lot of tourists, so we've gone out, we've audited the health inspections on restaurants. We've audited the safety downtown. We've audited all the hotels. We've, all of those kind of things that could derail this plan. The mayor there, he wants to develop a better school system. That is a priority of his. So is the police department and public safety. We've done a lot of audits in schools and public safety so that those strategic plan elements aren't derailed. If we're auditing things that are of lesser importance to you, they're not going to do you as much good. So, and when the audit's on the plan, everybody sees it. That department head that doesn't necessarily want an audit has now found out that he's on the audit plan. He may be apprehensive, especially if they haven't met you before. But after you've introduced yourself and went down in a non-threatening manner and tried to get acquainted with what they're doing and listen to them, and they can identify you with you, they know you're just doing your job. And, your position should always be we're here to help. We're not here just to drag you through and nickel and dime you over every little thing you might have done and find 5 transactions out of 5 million that were bad and put them in the report. To me, those probably are non-material. What we want to audit is their process to determine where their process has control weaknesses and how it should be bettered. Now, we find large variances and stuff. Of course, they're going to have to be reported. Might be some bad news in there, but you can correct it and move on. And I think over time, after using that manner and that strategy, people will identify with you and your staff, and you won't be feared.
Okay.
Thank you.
My turn. Welcome to Gainesville.
Thank you.
Under what circumstances would you contract with an independent external auditing firm, and why?
That's a very good question.
Well, thank you.
And that has to be done sometimes. We've done that in Nashville sometimes. And there's several instances where you might do that. One is if there's a big project that comes forth that you don't have the personnel for. The commission still wants you to carry on your audit plan, and there's something big out there that would basically take up your whole office for 8 months. You may not have the resources for that. So that would be one. Don't say yes, we're going to do it and we're going to deliver it and not be able to do it. I don't want to tell you I'm going to be able to bring you something and not be standing here to be able to do it. So that's one instance. The second instance is sometimes there are subjects or whatever that are so sensitive, or because the overall perception is that government in any of its, even though city auditor is independent, that because he is part of this government, he's to protect the organization. And sometimes you just have to go outside and get somebody else that has no skin in the game, that might not even be from around here, to come in and do the audit so people will listen to them. So that's another time. Now, in both of those times, I'll tell you, the audit function in-house can still play a valuable role. You can't just give it to a contractor and let them run, because for the most part, that's not going to work. They are going to come back with delay after delay and change order after change order. And that audit that was going to take, that they promised you in 3 months, is going to take a year and a half and going to cost you 3 times as much as you wanted it to. But if you're on top of things, not after it gets started, before the contract is signed. When I wrote contracts, I went through every possible element that could be and tried to make specifics in there, and then got a legal advisor to approve the language, so that all of that, everything that you could think of, was settled before the agreement signed. The old, Andy Griffith handshakes and everything and promises and stuff don't always work that good, because they can go wrong. And there's many of these big reports you can get that still, you've been waiting on this report for so long, and it's still not going to answer your questions.
Okay.
So,
Sorry about that. Okay, back down to me. Before I ask this question, I was going to tell you a little information you might not be aware of, but all the communications, emails and everything, are public record here. So as soon as you would send one, virtually the public can read it. So keeping that in mind, describe from your point of view what you believe the ideal communication relationship between you and your supervisors. In addition, how would you deliver both good and bad news?
well, in Nashville, in Tennessee in general, they have one of the first open records acts, and everything is open record there. Audit reports are open record after the final report, not up through the draft, and investigations of hotline calls are only public after the final report. Other than that, everything is confidential. But we are subject to, email. Not that everybody does get our email. They can get them if they want them, but for the most part, they're not interested in this time. They're too boring. But I have no problem interfacing by email with any. Sometimes it is the most convenient means. But like I tell some of my staff, I'll say, well, get in touch with those people and go, find out about this. And they'll say, okay, I'll go send them an email right quick. No, wait a minute. Hold on. Sometimes you just have to call people or go over there. Because, with 15 emails back and forth, you're still not going to know what you would in 10 minutes of sitting down with them. So, there's a various means of communication that need to be utilized. I have no problem utilizing any of them, or interdepartmental mail or what have you, and being fully aware that somebody can grab it at any time and the public can read it, and just make sure when you write something, if you get mad at somebody, you don't write them an email right then. You wait till tomorrow, because you probably wouldn't write the same one. And that happens a lot. People get mad, they go run down the hall, fire off something, and then by the next day they've changed their mind about it. But delivering good and bad news, well, first of all, most things should be open. Some things are, so striking that you may have to keep it a secret and deliver it at the proper time and place. And that may have to be done in person. I'm not much for sending emails of, look, we found all of a sudden or something of that nature, till it's all checked out. A lot of times you get information comes in, it looks like something might be a big deal, and then by the time you've checked it all out, it's not quite as big maybe as you thought it was. So you need to let all of that play out before inflaming people. So I'm fine with delivering it for whatever the situation merits at the time. I've ran over across the street to colonels' offices before to tell them something, and it needed to be told immediately, and had problem with that. And at other times, sent them an email. The same thing for department heads in the Nashville area. But it just depends on the situation.
back down to this end again. What was the most difficult professional situation that you have found yourself in? Question one. And the second part of that, explain the circumstances and your efforts to manage them.
Well, I probably think some of my time at Spay War was probably the most difficult. Although I loved the work and I was fully engaged. My boss had been there a long time, and unlike my boss now, who is very effective and worked well with, loved the man, does a great job. She had some, the organization was basically telling me, hey, you're the only person that stayed down there, that's been able to work with her over a period of years. So, I mean, most of the organization had the perception that she wasn't that effective. So, I was kind of, fighting that all the time, actually trying to defend her and getting, we were getting out good work over the years. So I think that kind of knocked some of it back. But I don't know, that it got kind of awkward to respond to all of these people who would, make comments about her and everything. You're talking about my boss, and I work with a woman and still, I'm friends with her and respect her a great deal. And not exactly sure what led to all the negativity, but it was a very awkward position to be in as the number 2 person. And I didn't leave Spay War for that reason. I basically left because after 21 years, when I retired from the military, I found out that working for the federal government, they were just beginning to put all of these little parameters in place for retirement with the federal government. When you already had a military retirement, there was various limiting factors going in there. So I spoke with the law director, who basically told me you'd probably be better off going somewhere else to work on another retirement rather than with the federal government, because by the time you retire, they're going to have so many things in place, you're never going to get anything. So I started, it was amazingly, I had an old resume out on the Institute for Internal Auditor website. I got an email after they stood up the independent office from my boss. They had hired him, and he emailed. I never even applied for the job. He emailed me and asked me if I was interested in it. My wife and I just actually come back from Nashville on vacation. So I called him, and within a few months he hired me.
What, if you could describe a work situation in which you faced an ethical dilemma, what was the situation, what made it difficult, and why did you eventually choose the path that you did?
Well, let's see. Well, I was thinking hard. I guess there's been audits over the years that there's, sometimes elements that you've uncovered that could be damaging to the people in the department that you like and like to work with, and you don't want to get them fired. Also on investigations, you're sitting there with, and it's particularly with investigations, most of the people you hire don't intend to steal from you when you hire them. They're good people when they're hired, just like the rest of us. But if they're left alone long enough and they perceive these opportunities, and then they're hit with some kind of stressor in their life, like their son has been jailed and they need an attorney, or that somebody has a medical condition in their family, they start out borrowing just to help it and put it back. They don't intend to steal. And sometimes when you find those kind of things and you're sitting there with this person interviewing them, and you know what they've done, and it can be challenging knowing that, okay, when I issue my report, they're going to get fired tomorrow. They've lost their job. They've been here this many years. They've lost their retirement. They've lost their job. They've got kids to support. It can be tough sitting there with these people because you have some type of empathy for them. Sure, they made the decision to steal. I don't blame myself for writing a report and figuring it out, trying to protect the public interest, but it can still be very difficult when you're sitting with these people knowing what the consequences are. And many times they're very, they can't believe they've done this, and and it sounds, and they're crying and all of these kind of things, and they may be subject to prosecution. For the most part, though, a lot of frauds, unless they're real large and they're public, they're not prosecuted, and that's simply because most district attorneys in a large organization would tell you, unless it's 250,000 or more, I'm not going to prosecute it. Or the NCIS and DCIS will tell you, unless it's $1 million, we probably don't have the time for it. And the U.S. attorneys will tell you the same thing. They're basically not going to prosecute these things. And quite frankly, a lot of organizations don't want to go out there to their public and their members, particularly churches that are stole from a lot. They do not want to go to their congregation and say, we have let somebody here steal from you for the last 2 or 3 or 10 years. And so those kind of things are reasons that are not reported, or that they're not prosecuted, but it's still very damaging to the person. And so I've felt myself, feeling sorry for these people sometime, even though they've done bad things, and having empathy for them. But in the end, I have to do my job. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Am I next?
Back to you. Yep.
What have several other people, such as auditees, staff, or bosses, told you are your strengths? And then what about your shortcomings or development needs?
Okay, well, I guess my strengths, I think, have always been managing people. I've always been able to get people motivated and get them behind one plan of action and getting them to be inspired themselves. I find you get a lot more work if they want to do all of this, unless other than your plan of demanding that they do it. So I think I've always been good at that. I've always been good at the big picture part of looking at something. Now, okay, just taking for granted what you say is true, what is that going to mean? And sometimes you can come to the realization, okay, so what? Okay, or okay, somebody is doing something they shouldn't do, and we want you to check it out. Okay, it sounds like they shouldn't do it, but show me where it's wrong. Okay, is this wrong or not? Let's see if it's wrong first. So it's all those kind of questions have to be answered, and a lot of times people go plodding ahead to check all this stuff out without looking at the big picture elements first. So I think I've been good at that, looking at the big picture. I'm, like anybody, I've missed details before. Everybody has to work on that. I'm human. I've missed some of the details, but I think I've always gotten the main themes right. I know at Spay War, when I was leaving there, I went back and read some of my reports I did when I first got there, and I found, because I knew so much more than some of my earlier reports, I found that some technical aspects of things I'd reporting on were, I believed, incorrect at this time. But the funny thing was, it was so specific and so technical, nobody else knew it. Even the department head, when we had given them the report, didn't know it was wrong. So I went and called them and told them, hey, I'm leaving now, but I was going to tell you that was wrong in there. So I'm not afraid to admit it when I'm wrong. But like anything, I've been the subject, of giving people too much, credit or whatever sometimes, and thinking that this person's working out good and giving them the benefit of the doubt when maybe I shouldn't have. I've probably done that a few times. So I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes in any job, but I'll freely admit it. Try to improve.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so back to me, and let's just ask you, why are you interested in the city auditor's position with the city of Gainesville?
Well, I'm interested because I've been the number 2 man in Nashville. I've worked for a good leader. He's been renewed on a new 8-year term. I feel I'm ready to have my own. I'm ready to do it myself. I probably, if I'd went into this field initially, I spent 21 years in the Marine Corps, so I didn't get started till later on. Same thing. I've got a 10 and 12-year-old. I started kind of late on that, so I feel I've always. My father lives down was a commissioner down in Charlotte County. He's down there. I've got an uncle in town. I lived in Jacksonville. I was at Cecil Field part of the time, a F-18 unit. My dad was in the Air Force. We moved around so much. When people ask me where I'm from, I pretty much tell them Jacksonville instead of Chanute Air Force Base, because they where's that at? And all that stuff. So I've pretty much grown up in the South, and so I think I've been to Gainesville many times before, and I used to go from Jacksonville down in my grandparents were in Miami all the years. When they retired, they moved to St. Pete. Well, I was in Jacksonville, so I'd go down to St. Pete quite a bit. Well, of course, I got ticketed down by Waldo once, and then that was right before the AAA put it on the list. So I knew of Gainesville. I'd been to Gainesville, but I didn't really know of Alachua County until I got that ticket, which I protested. Wound up costing me, I think, $35 more than it would have if I would have just sent it in. But such is life. I believe that looks like this is a good opportunity. My wife also, she's never necessarily been enamored with Nashville. She's not into country music that much, and so she's she says everybody comes down as a guitar and a dream, and so she's ready for a fresh start, and I think it's a good opportunity, good community. No reason not to apply for it.
Wonderful. Are there is there anything else that you'd like to add, or maybe to clarify an earlier question that may have been stirring around your head since you covered it?
No, I think I've been able to make my case pretty good. I feel satisfied with my answers.
Okay. Well, then that concludes all we have at this time, and I know you'll be escorted out, and then you'll come back to us one-on-one with some interviews today and tomorrow. So
Okay.
Thank you very much for being here.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.